So today's conversation that Yossi and I wanted to talk about is how not to be influenced, affected by the environment that we are in, especially the environment of stress, worry, fear, changes, all of this. And we've been discussing on and off about this for a while. So we thought, okay, how can we bring this conversation together to everyone to reflect together with us and also see what they are doing about it, what they can do about it, right? How it's influencing them. So that's the conversation. Yossi, let's introduce and then we go into talking about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the invitation, Asel, and lovely to connect
Absolutely.
again with you. For those who have not listened to our previous conversations, I'm Yossi. I'm a transitioning humanitarian, aid worker, single mom, and going into this journey of life coaching and breath work for moms and women in the aid sector. So that's my brand, Sacred Resilience Embodied. And yeah, so I'm just excited to launch into this conversation today.
Amazing. So I think it's one of those challenging times, maybe is an understatement, really, where right? It's one of those times like today, a client of mine was saying that I just feel like I need to kill someone, right? So it's one of those times where it feels like everything is not going well, right? Work-wise, life-wise, challenges are everywhere. And then on top of it, you go to an office, especially if you're a humanitarian who are still working or worried for their job, right? Going to the office and then everyone else talking about how shitty everything is and how they don't want to be there and how they want to leave. And in all of this turmoil, the question is, how do you keep your sanity and your little desire that left for work instead of just wanting to leave everything and go to the mountains and never come back? So I think this is really the question that we would like to discuss is how do you do that? What's working for you and what you can do about it? And we have some suggestions, but maybe we start first, Yossi, with the question of how are you dealing with it and what's working for you?
Yeah, thank you. I think you really framed it very well because that's exactly how it feels. Like it's just, every day there is this huge kind of like heavy energy just hanging over the office. Whenever we speak with colleagues, everyone is just in this kind of very gloom and doom mood. And there's so much uncertainty. I think the uncertainty is actually the worst bit of it. Everyone was just wants to know what will happen to their job and to their life, right? And so the longer the process drags on, the easier it is to kind of go into that spiral of anxiety and fear and yeah, the negative emotions just flooding our system, right? And so I think what's working for me, because, okay, I mean, my situation might be a little bit unique because I've already decided for myself that I'm not going to apply, right? So I have that level of certainty in a way that others don't. But for me to kind of protect myself from that energy, because obviously, although I'm not really in that kind of cycle of needing to have clarity about what's next, I'm still there. I'm still meeting my colleagues. I'm a team leader, right? So I'm trying to manage all these bits and pieces. And I think one of the things that has really, again, I think I've talked about it before, but the breath work for me is really the breathing and trying to like ground myself when things feel overwhelming has really worked very well for me. And just also going into nature. Being in nature for me is like the number one healing aspect of just clearing my mind and just leaving behind all that negativity and the collective anxiety that we're kind of, it's this soup of anxiety that we're swimming in right now, which is like, oh,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I think one of the things that you said might be a very interesting one to even further explore is this keep expecting things to get clear and not having a decision, right? And I think this is one of the things that I would suggest. Whatever the situation you are in, having your own decision as to, if it goes this way, then this is what I will decide. If it goes this way, this is what I will decide. And having that level of agency over the situation might help a lot. Because if we keep expecting other people to decide for us, it will keep generating that feeling of powerlessness even further, and we feel like we're just not able to do anything in this situation, right? So in order to give ourselves a little sense of, okay, I have the power over this thing of my life, and I can decide this way in case, I think these are some of the fundamentals that you can really do, right? The other one, like Yossi, you said about breath work, I love that. I practice this in addition to meditation every day. And I think what a lot of people have maybe difficulty is like, oh, I am not into that. I don't know how to do it, and all of those things that they may, they may stop themselves from doing it. But what you need to understand is whether whatever the technique that you are using, it needs to be practiced to a level that you get comfortable with, and you will not get comfortable in the beginning, and that's okay too. But the logic that maybe I can explain is, whatever the emotions we're accumulating, they need to come out in some way. That's really how our like system works as humans, right? And if they don't come out in some way, they keep influencing us in the negative all of the time without you recognizing and realizing it. And knowing that collective energy that's so strong currently, it's very difficult not to be affected by it, and not, like, I don't know, being very smooth in your journey. It's like, I think impossible, because we humans, we are very social beings. We tend to be affected by others, and that's normal, right? So therefore, I would say there are two ways to always look at it. One is how to keep releasing it. So breath work, going to the nature, many other different activities is one of the ways to keep releasing it. And another is how not to generate it to begin with. And not generating is also a skill, but again, it's a skill that you need to practice doing it, right? So the way that I have practiced in my life is, how do I put my blinders inside me, so to say, or like the filters, whichever the way that you can call it, where I take in what is for me and I don't take anything else from other people. And we have that ability as well. Another way not to generate those emotions is not to be triggered. Now, that's also a skill. We can work on that, right? But those are also possibilities that we can always practice. But I think what's important that I want to really get to is, whatever you decide, whatever your technique and mechanism is, you need to practice regularly to keep letting all of these emotions out, right? Anything you would like to add to this, Yosin?
Yeah, I love what you just said, Asel. And I think there are so many modalities and so many ways to release those emotions, right? And I think the key word that you said for me is really the releasing of it. So, yes, we can also avoid them and to try to protect ourselves. And of course, that's part of it. And I think that's quite an advanced skill because most of us are empathetic beings, right? So, and we are social, as you said. But in terms of then practicing how to actually release that energy is for me a really key aspect of what I also want to do and what I already practice, because there are obviously, ways that everyone around us, and if we are in this collective field of humanitarian work, it's really, really hard to not be affected at all, right? Even though we have some sense of clarity about our future, it's there will be always some small aspects of what we are all experiencing that will leak into our energy field and that will affect us in some way. So what I really loved about what you said is we have to try to release it. And there are, of course, many ways to do that. And I think, for example, if we connect to, how we can also recognize what are the emotions that we're feeling in that moment, because many of us are actually not so much connected to our body and our emotions, and then we just say, oh, I'm angry or I'm frustrated. But then if we interrogate a little bit what's underlying those emotions, we can do a whole investigation around what are the underlying feelings that are there, right? So a lot of the people that I'm engaging with and that are in my field talk about this grief, about, losing this identity, but also a frustration and anger with the senior management in their organizations, or a feeling of injustice because our specific situations have not been respected, right? And so I think if you then tap into what is the deeper emotion under it, you can also help to release it in a much more powerful way. And one of the things that I also taught in my workshop last week, which was called Women in Aid, was how can we release anger? Because anger becomes a very kind of limiting emotion to carry if we don't release it. Because again, what's under the anger are much more deeper emotions. So if we can release that anger in a way that it kind of just goes out of our body, we can immediately feel a relief both in our mind and in our body and our energy levels, right? So I really liked what you said about releasing it and letting it out of our energetic and our physical being.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, once we understand what is the cause of it, let's say, right? What are the reasons why these emotions are there? The other thing that I tend to practice, which I recommend as well, is how also not to make them wrong or not
Mhm.
make them problem in some way, right?
Not
Because I think that's
shaming
also
ourselves, right?
exactly right, right? So not getting into, oh, this is not, this shouldn't be happening, or I should be now out of it, or this is
Mhm.
not, I can't handle this now, or it's not the right time, right? In
And that's
some
almost like an
way,
avoidance, right? So that also becomes an
exactly.
avoidance, which is also really harmful, because
Yes.
then again, we're not releasing it, we're just kind of putting it off and
Yeah.
like, let's deal with this later.
Exactly, exactly, right? So I think the point is really whatever the emotion is there, they're there for a reason. I don't think we are very like irrational human beings just keep generating emotions. That's not how it is, right? So we always have emotions for a reason, and if we don't release it in the time that they appear, then they keep influencing us negatively to a point that later it might be late to deal with them, or it will compile into more heavier and more intense emotional state, or it will also in fact impact our relationship with other people, right? So there are a lot of consequences that we don't want to go into. So therefore, how
Mm.
can we do that in the moment when as they arrive, and how can we do it in a way that we don't shame or make them wrong or resist them or something like this. Instead, understanding, okay, here are the reasons why they're there. It's very human to have those emotions in those moments, right? If we are subjected to injustice, obviously we should have certain emotions, because if we don't, then we might actually check with ourselves, something might be wrong, and that's also not good, right? So therefore, having those emotions is very human experience. So how do we release it effectively? And also checking with yourself, how how do you know that you have released them effectively, meaning that it is no longer influencing you? And the way that I would know for myself is, if I have released them well, I have regenerated my energy. And this is really how I see then, okay, if I have gotten to a level of either feeling very much peacefulness, which regenerates energy, right? Or I can really get those emotions to something else, something that helps me move forward. And these are the ways that you can know. Yossi, what would you say? How people would then say, okay, I have released it, now it's gone. What would you say?
Yeah, I think just to add to one point that you said, what it can lead to if we don't release the energy, it can actually also over a long time lead to disease
Mhm.
and burnout and exhaustion, right? Because
Yeah.
everything in our body is energy. And so if we don't release those emotions, they get stuck in our body and they actually drag us down. And so many people in our sector suffer from that depletion, exhaustion, and burnout is the worst kind of last step, right? But also like diseases like heart diseases or depression, right? They can all be impacted by this. So it's really such a powerful, yeah, realization that it actually can
Mhm.
prevent these diseases as well. And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, how do we feel when we release something negative? If we are honest with ourselves, right? If we have, for example, said something to someone about our real, true emotions, like if someone hurt us and we talk to them in a kind of constructive way and we manage to release that trigger that the person kind of had on us, how do we feel? We feel relieved, we feel lighter, we feel more open in our body, right? We feel more confident and we actually feel proud of ourselves for having done the
Mhm.
work. And so that's the invitation, I think, today, that those of us who are kind of in the midst of this vicious cycle of feeling disempowered, feeling that this is being done to me, there is a big injustice, and, what am I going to do with my life? How can we bring back, as you said, the agency and the empowered choices that we have? Like, for example, is there a place that you would prefer to work rather than other locations? Then you just apply for jobs in that location, right? So that's already a tiny, like, micro choice and agency that you can take in that process.
Yeah, I love that. So, whatever the environment and the things happening in the environment, I like to think that every human being has the power to decide how to interact with that environment.
Mm,
Because if it wasn't true, then we would just be following everyone else or following what's going on as if like we have no say in it, right? Even though in a lot of systems that we work, it just feels like we have no say in it. But then I also like to remind myself that I'm the one who decided to work for that system. So that's already where my choice was, right? So therefore, now things gotten in the way they have gotten does not mean that I continue having this powerless stand on or passive stand and I can't do anything about it. So therefore, reminding myself that, okay, this is the environment around me. I can see what are the dynamics, what's going on. I have observed it so many times now that I can see how it's likely to impact me. And then let me now get into a bit of proactive way of how do I want to interact with this environment, right? What are the tools that I have that I make some decisions? What are the tools I have that I release some of these emotions? What are the tools I have that I don't let some of the energy enter me in the way that it used to, right? So these are the things that I think it would be good for us to look at it at a macro level in some way
mm,
as well, right? So that we don't keep feeling like we're just being dragged into or we're just um, not able to do something with it, right? Or drowning in it. All of these are just so difficult to keep handling over time. And therefore, making some like looking at the situation from outside as if to say, and okay, this is what has been happening so far, right? And we have been experiencing this funding crisis since the beginning of the year, I believe, right? So therefore,
yeah.
it has been happening now for some months, and it might be the time for us to decide how do we want to interact with the situation.
Mm,
What are the tools we can use? What are the tools that are not working for us? And we find other tools. But if we are going in this sector or even any other sector, learning how to deal with all of those emotions and energies that we have compiled within us is an extremely essential skill if we don't want to stay in the survival mode the whole time, right? Meaning the stressful mode the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and I
Yes, you
think,
want to say
some of
something?
the things that I've been exploring as well is that the physical reaction to either
Mm,
stressful situations or exciting situations is actually pretty similar. Because,
mm,
if we think about as humans in the evolutionary history, we were made for responding to danger, right? We were living in little caves out in whatever, and our nervous system is basically built to protect us from harm, right? So the minute there's like a lion snatching us, we are ready to jump, and our cortisol and adrenaline starts working. But the problem with today's world is that our nervous system and our brain has not really evolved since those times, right? So we are still the cave women and men that lived in the savannah, but we live in a very different environment. But the body's reaction to it is very similar. And so that's something I think it's also interesting to explore. Like, how does it feel? Again, coming back to our body, like, how does it feel when I'm nervous, when I'm in this anxiety situation? And really finding tools, as you said, to alleviate some of the kind of rush of cortisol or adrenaline that is so typical for this fear and this fight or flight mode that our nervous system gets into. And for example, I hear a lot of colleagues saying, I'm working out, I'm doing all of this like super intense things just to
mm,
get out the frustration and the anger. But actually, one of the things that we have to also remember is that those activities, they are high energy and they create even more adrenaline in our body. So we're almost doing something that's counterproductive to actually soothing and calming ourselves. So I'm not
mm.
saying that you have to do only meditation, but finding maybe something in between, that helps us to recover a little bit from that overdrive in our nervous system and in our brain, to help us be a little bit more grounded and, yeah, just present in that moment. And also, just I think important is to acknowledge that, yes, this is a challenging time, right? It's not like we're saying that this is all fantastic and everything is an opportunity, but it's also giving ourselves a little bit of compassion and holding ourselves in this moment to recognize that, yes, this is a challenging moment, but I do have the ability to, you know, control how I react, how I respond to the situation, how I want to go through this next phase of my life, whatever the challenges are that are coming our way.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to maybe wrap up with this is that whatever the situation is, we have gone through as human beings before, right? How we did that, obviously, individually different for everyone, but we have been able to go through a lot of challenges in the past. Our history is full of that. But I think what also that makes me realize is that I, as a human being, and I believe this is true for every human being, we are so powerful that I think we don't yet recognize that power. And because we don't yet recognize, or we haven't really figured it out, how powerful our like minds, body, how they work all together to get ourselves out of any situation. And I think science is still studying it. I still feel because we don't know what we're capable of, I think that's a great news that we can always keep exploring and finding out what we're really capable of to get out of any situation that is so difficult for us to handle, and getting out of it in a way that gives us even more recognition of that power that we have.
Mm,
And I feel like this situation currently is that situation where we either use it as an evidence of how everything is bad and doom and gloom, which is not going to help us, or we use it as an evidence of how we can also get out of this in the way that we choose to, in the way that reinforces us as human beings rather than gets us dragged down to the avenues that we don't even want to experience, right? So therefore, I would
Absolutely.
love to invite everyone to, maybe this is a time where we recognized how powerful human beings we are
Mm,
and how capable we are to, solve this level of challenge. And if we can do this, then nothing else is scary anymore in some way, right? Because if we're able to get out of this, then I don't know, who knows what else is out there, but at least we give ourselves this assurance that we were able to handle this well
yeah.
into the best of our abilities, therefore nothing else can be scary.
Yeah, I love that, Asel, because I think also what I've noticed in recent weeks is that already just being in the middle of this transition has like expanded my capacity and my
Mm,
ability to handle difficult situations to an extent that I had not really thought about or thought would happen.
yeah.
So the expansion and the growth that happens in challenging times is actually
Mm-hmm.
how we can grow over time. And as you call it,
Yeah.
power, right? It's the same thing. So it's
Yeah.
like if you think about it as a circle, it always grows bigger, right? So
Yeah.
every challenge kind of makes us grow more and more, and the circle kind
Yeah.
of gets bigger and bigger, and we expand our ability to handle difficult situations or grow resilience and grow as human beings, right? Because
Yeah.
challenges do expand us as human beings in all different ways.
Yeah.
So that's really just also an invitation from my side to see it as a growth opportunity and seeing how we can become experts at tackling these different challenges. And yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Anything else you see?
I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much, Asel. This was lovely as always.
Oh, thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone to listen and watch this. Of course, please let us know if we can support you in these days.
Yeah,
It's one of those days also, I think, is where we can really reach out to get support. I've been doing that for so much lately, and I
yeah,
really want to invite everyone to do that. If there's a way we can do that, you also can do that, please let us know. And also, of course, we're sending you all the big hugs and energy, and trust that we go through this.
yeah. This
Thank you
is
so
not the
much.
time to do it alone, right? I think that's also one big lesson that I've learned is like the
Yes,
power of community and support because
yes,
we are not meant to go through things alone. Again, as
exactly,
evolutionary humans, we are meant to live in community, and it's just such a beautiful way to, yeah, to be there for each other. So, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and see you very
Thank
soon.
you. See you soon.